Naya Solaris crouched behind the twisted metal debris, her breathing shallow as she peered through her tactical visor. The ruins of old Terran City stretched before her, a graveyard of humanity's former glory. 3 years since the Craxian invasion, and still she fought one of the few who refused to bend to alien rule. "Target approaching," whispered Mira through the cum unit. 3 o'clock, moving fast. Naya's fingers tightened around her pulse rifle. This wasn't just any mission, this was her chance to strike at the heart of the enemy. Commander Zarin Krell, the notorious half-human, half-Craxian military leader responsible for the fall of the Eastern Bastion, was reportedly inspecting the area. The intelligence had cost them 2 good operatives. She wouldn't waste their sacrifice. "Copy that," she murmured, adjusting her position. The setting sun cast long shadows across the desolate landscape, perfect cover for what she had planned. A flash of movement caught her eye, tall, broad-shouldered, moving with predatory grace. Even from this distance, there was no mistaking him. The distinctive silver-blue markings along his temples identified him as Craxian nobility. But his human features were evident, too, a cruel joke of genetics that made him even more despised among the resistance. They called him the Void Walker, for none who opposed him lived to speak of it. Naya lined up her shot. One clean hit would end this war criminal and boost resistance morale across the sectors. Her finger tensed on the trigger, but something went wrong. A proximity alarm blared from Krell's wrist device. He moved with inhuman speed, rolling behind a concrete pillar just as Naya fired. The shot went wide, superheating the air where he'd stood moments before. "Sniper, Southeast Quadrant," came a voice's voice, deep and commanding. Naya cursed under her breath, scrambling backward as return fire peppered her position. "Mira, I'm compromised." "Initiating extraction plan Delta," Static answered her. "The cums were being jammed." She darted through the ruins, her heart pounding, as footsteps thundered behind her. A quick glance showed 3 Craxian soldiers in pursuit, their armor gleaming in the fading light. But not Krell. That realization came a second too late, as a powerful arm locked around her waist from a side passage, yanking her into the shadows. Her rifle clattered to the ground as she was spun around, face to face with her target. Up close, Zarin Krell was even more intimidating. His eyes were the most striking feature human in shape, but Craxian in color. An unsettling silver that seemed to pierce through her. A jagged scar ran from his temple to his jaw, testament to battles fought and won. "The famous Naya Solaris," he said, his voice surprisingly soft, despite the steel grip holding her immobile. "The ghost of New Haven. I've been looking forward to meeting you." "Well, I'd rather die than be taken prisoner," she spat, reaching for the blade concealed at her belt. Krell intercepted her hand effortlessly. "Death is easy, fighter. Living takes courage." He studied her face with those unnerving silver eyes. "And I think you have plenty of that." A crash of artillery fire shook the ground beneath them. But it wasn't resistance weaponry, it was something else entirely. "Scavengers," Krell muttered, glancing toward the sound. "They've breached the perimeter." His grip on Naya loosened slightly as he activated his cum unit. "All units fall back to extraction point. We've got company." In that moment of distraction, Naya twisted free, bringing her knee up sharply. Krell blocked the blow, but couldn't prevent her escape as she darted down a narrow passage between 2 collapsed buildings. "Run all you want, Solaris," his voice called after her, eerily calm amid the growing chaos. "This city will be a death trap by nightfall. And when darkness comes, you might find the enemy of your enemy is your only friend." Naya didn't slow, even as his words echoed in her mind. The Resistance had warned of increased scavenger activity, remnants of humanity twisted by experimental Craxian bioweapons.
Hunting both species imminently.
If they were here in force, her mission had just become infinitely more complicated. As night began to fall over the ruins, Naya realized with growing unease that Krell might be right. The city had become a battlefield between 3 forces. And she was caught in the middle alone, outgunned and with darkness closing in. Darkness had fallen completely over Old Terran City when Naya heard them. The distinctive clicking vocalizations of scavengers communicating in the shadows. She pressed her back against the cold concrete of her hiding place. A half-collapsed maintenance tunnel, that still bore faded warning signs from a civilization now gone. Her tactical visor's power cell was dangerously low. She'd have to conserve it, using the night vision only when absolutely necessary. The resistance base was 20 kilometers south, an impossible journey on foot through scavenger territory without backup or transport. A crash echoed from somewhere nearby, followed by weapons fire, the distinctive whine of Craxian pulse rifles. The scavengers responded with their horrific screaming war cries. Naya's skin crawled at the sound. Once human. The scavengers were now something else entirely twisted by the early Craxian. Bioweapons into feral pack hunters with heightened senses and an insatiable hunger. Better you than me, Krell, she whispered, allowing herself a grim smile at the thought of the commander facing the creatures. But her smile faded quickly. If the scavengers overwhelmed the Craxian forces, they would swarm the city in greater numbers. Cutting off any hope of escape, the firefight intensified, then abruptly silenced. Naya activated her visor briefly, scanning the area. Nothing. She needed to move while the scavengers were distracted with whatever remained of the Craxian patrol, slipping from her hiding place. Naya navigated through the rubble with practiced stealth. Years of resistance operations had taught her how to move like a ghost through ruined cities. Each step was carefully placed, each breath controlled. She had covered perhaps half a kilometer when a hand clamped over her mouth from behind. "Don't make a sound," Zaran Krell's voice whispered against her ear. "They're hunting us." Naya's instinct was to fight, but the urgency in his tone gave her pause. His hand slowly released her mouth, and she turned to face him in the darkness. His silver eyes seemed to glow faintly, another sign of his mixed heritage. "My team is dead," he said simply, his voice barely audible. Blood streaked one side of his face, and his armor was scorched and torn in places. "The scavengers have evolved. They're using tactics now. Why should I care?" Naya whispered back, fingers inching toward her sidearm. "Because they're between you and your extraction point." His gaze flicked to her hand. "And that won't stop them. You need me as much as I need you right now." A distant howl pierced the night, then another, closer. The scavengers were converging. "There's a military bunker 3 sectors west," Krell continued, "reinforced with emergency supplies. We can hold out there until extraction." Naya laughed bitterly. "I'm not going anywhere with you, Voidwalker." Krell's expression hardened. "Then stay here and die. Your choice, Solaris." As he turned to leave, Naya caught sight of something moving in the darkness beyond him, a hunched silhouette with too many joints bending in unnatural ways. Her visor flickered to life just long enough to confirm her fear. A scavenger scout, less than 20 meters away, its mutated form barely recognizable as once human. "Wait," she hissed, grabbing Krell's arm. 3 o'clock. Scout. To her surprise, Krell didn't question her. He simply nodded and gestured to a narrow passage between 2 collapsed buildings. "That route. Stay close." For hours, they navigated the treacherous landscape of the ruined city, moving in tense silence. Twice they were forced to hide as scavenger packs passed nearby, and once they had to fight a brief, desperate encounter with 3 of the creatures that left Naya with claw marks across her shoulder, and Krell with a deeper respect for her combat skills. "You fight well," he said as they paused to catch their breath in the hollow shell of what had once been a transport terminal. "For a terrorist, you bleed red," she replied, eyeing the wound on his forearm. "For a monster," something like amusement flickered across his face. "Is that what they tell you I am? A monster? I've seen the records of the Eastern Bastion. 3,000 civilians dead in a single day." Grell's expression darkened. "History written by the defeated rarely tells the whole truth." "And what truth am I missing, Commander?" Naya's voice dripped with contempt. Before he could answer, a metallic screech echoed through the terminal, followed by the sound of multiple sets of claws scrabbling over debris. "We need to move," Krell said, rising to his feet with fluid grace. "The bunker is close." They emerged into what had once been a public square, now a crater-pocked wasteland under the light of twin moons. And there, half buried in rubble but still intact, stood the reinforced doors of a military installation. There, Krell pointed, already moving toward it. Naya hesitated only a moment before following. The howls were getting closer, more numerous. Whatever grudge she held against this man, whatever justice she sought, it would have to wait. Survival came first. They'd almost reached the bunker when the first scavenger burst from a collapsed storefront to their right. It moved with terrifying speed, its elongated limbs propelling it in a loping gait that covered ground faster than any human could run. Krell spun, weapon raised, but the creature was already too close. It slammed into him, sending them both crashing to the ground in a tangle of limbs human. Alien and monstrous, without thinking, Naya fired 3 precise shots. The scavenger convulsed, its mutated body jerking as the energy pulses tore through vital organs. It collapsed atop Krell, who shoved the twitching corpse aside and stared up at Naya with undisguised surprise. "You saved me," he said as he regained his feet. Naya's jaw tightened. "I need your access codes for the bunker." "Don't read too much into it." More howls erupted around them, the pack responding to their fallen member. Krell reached the bunker door and pressed his palm against the scanner. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a groan of long-dormant mechanisms, the door began to slide open. "Inside, now," Krell shouted as shadows detached themselves from the surrounding ruins, moving with predatory purpose toward them. They tumbled through the opening, just as the first scavengers reached them. Krell slammed his fist against the interior panel, and the massive door reversed direction. Sealing with a hiss of hydraulics and the reassuring clunk of locking mechanisms, claws scrabbled against the outer surface. An inhuman. Shrieks of frustration penetrated even the thick barrier between them and the creatures outside. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing the bunker's interior in dim blue light. Naya found herself standing closer to Krell than she'd intended, close enough to see the fine lines of strain around his eyes. The subtle difference in texture where his skin showed Craxian heritage along his temples. "So," he said quietly, his silver eyes meeting hers, "it seems we're trapped together." Naya Solaris. "For now," she answered, taking a deliberate step back. "But don't think this changes anything between us." "Of course not." Something like a smile touched his lips. "You'll still try to kill me when this is over. Count on it."
Outside.
The scavengers continued their assault on the door, but the sounds seemed distant now, unimportant compared to the strange tension filling the space between human resistance fighter and half-alien. Commander enemies forced into an alliance neither had wanted but both now needed to survive. Dawn came and went, but inside the windowless bunker, time seemed to stand still. The emergency lighting cast everything in shades of blue and shadow as Naya inventoried their supplies. Food rations, water purification tablets, medical kits. The bunker had been well stocked before abandonment. "The communication array is damaged," Krell announced, emerging from the small control room. "And the electromagnetic storm that's moving in will block any signals for at least 12 hours. "Convenient," Naya muttered, not looking up from the medkit she was rifling through. "You'd think I'd planned this." There was a hint of amusement in his voice. Being trapped in a bunker with the Resistance's most notorious assassin wasn't exactly on my agenda for today. She found what she was looking for, a tube of antiseptic gel, and straightened. "Your shoulder needs treatment. The scavenger's claws are typically coated with bacteria." Rail raised an eyebrow. "Now you're concerned for my well-being?" "I need you alive to get out of here," she replied flatly. "Consider it pragmatism." A ghost of a smile touched his lips as he lowered himself onto a storage crate, wincing slightly as he removed the damaged upper section of his armor. Beneath it, his undersuit was torn, revealing a deep set of parallel gashes across his left shoulder and chest. Naya approached cautiously, medical supplies in hand. Up close, the differences in his physiology were more apparent, the slightly iridescent quality to his skin where it showed Craxian heritage, the more pronounced musculature. Yet he was unmistakably part human too, in ways that complicated the hatred she'd nursed for years. "It must be difficult," she said as she cleaned the wound, "not belonging fully to either world." Krell's silver eyes fixed on her face. "Is that sympathy, Solaris? From the woman who tried to assassinate me yesterday?" "Curiosity," she corrected. The Resistance has files on you, but they're incomplete. Half Craxian, half human. Mother unknown, father a high-ranking Craxian general, raised in their military from childhood. She applied the antiseptic with perhaps more force than necessary, satisfied when he tensed in pain. The perfect weapon to use against us. Is that what your files say? His voice remained calm despite her rough treatment. That I'm a weapon? Aren't you? Krell was silent for a long moment. Outside, the electromagnetic storm had begun in earnest, rattling the bunker with occasional tremors as it disrupted the planet's already unstable atmosphere. My mother was Dr. Elena Vega, he said finally. She was a xenobiologist studying Craxian culture before the invasion. She and General Krell met during diplomatic exchanges. Their relationship was unprecedented. Naya's hands stilled. Dr. Vega. She was a hero of the pre-war scientific community. She believed cooperation between our species was possible. A shadow crossed his face. When the Craxian hardliners initiated the invasion, she was branded a traitor by humans, while my father was considered compromised by his own kind. They fled to the outer colonies, but their ship was attacked. My mother put me in an escape pod. She didn't make it out. The bunker trembled again as Naya finished bandaging his wound, her touch gentler now, despite herself. So the Craxians took you? My father's family? They saw potential in me, a bridge between two worlds. Others saw only an abomination. His gaze grew distant. I was raised to be a perfect soldier, but taught to value both halves of my heritage. And yet you lead forces against humans? I lead forces against extremists, he corrected, his eyes returning to hers with sudden intensity. The same extremists who assassinated the human peace delegates 3 years ago, triggering the full-scale invasion. Naya stepped back as if struck. That's a lie. The Craxians attacked the peace conference unprovoked. Is that what your leaders told you? Krell stood, towering over her. The delegation was attacked by human separatists, those who feared peace more than war. I was there, Naya. I saw it happen. No, she shook her head. That's not possible. The Resistance formed to fight Craxian aggression. We don't target our own. Not all who claim to fight for humanity share the same goals. He moved to a storage locker, retrieving a small data drive. This contains the unaltered security footage from that day. Your leaders have likely never shown you this. Aya stared at the offered drive, conflict written across her features. Everything she had fought for, everyone she had lost, could it all have been based on a lie? Another violent tremor shook the bunker, stronger than before. A section of ceiling collapsed in the far corner, sending dust and debris cascading across the floor. The storm is intensifying, Krell observed, tucking the drive away when she didn't take it. This bunker was built to withstand conventional warfare, not natural disasters. We need to move to the lower level, as if to emphasize his point. The lights flickered and died, plunging them into complete darkness. A moment later, emergency backup power engaged, illuminating their faces in a dim red glow in that crimson light. Naya saw something in Zoran Krell's expression she hadn't expected, not cruelty or cunning, but a weariness that mirrored her own. A soldier, tired of endless conflict, fighting for a cause that grew more complex with each revelation. I don't trust you, she said quietly as they gathered essential supplies. But I'm willing to hear you out. That's more than most would offer. He handed her an emergency lamp. Sometimes understanding begins with simply listening. As they descended to the bunker's lower level, the storm raged above them, as fierce and chaotic as the conflict that had brought them together. Yet in its eye, a fragile truce had formed, not friendship, not alliance, but the first tentative steps towards something neither had thought possible: truth. The lower level of the bunker was colder, but more stable, designed to withstand even orbital bombardment. Naya sat cross-legged on a cot, watching as Krell interfaced with the antiquated computer systems. His fingers moved with surprising dexterity across the control panel, bringing dormant screens to life. Power reserves at 30%, he announced. The storm's interfering with the solar collectors. We'll have heat and minimal lighting for about 18 hours. Naya nodded absently, her mind still processing everything he'd told her during their descent. If what he claimed was true of the Resistance, Leadership had manipulated events to perpetuate the war, then everything she'd fought for was built on deception. "The footage," she said suddenly. "Show me." Krell turned to face her, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "Are you certain? There are truths that, once known, cannot be unknown. I need to see it." Without further comment, he inserted the data drive into the console. The largest screen flickered, then displayed a high-angle view of an elegant meeting chamber. The timestamp showed a date 3 years earlier, the day the war had officially begun. "This is from the security system at the Geneva Accords," Krell explained. "Unedited and verified by multiple independent sources." The footage showed human and Craxian delegates seated around a circular table. The atmosphere appeared tense, but civil. Naya recognized some faces from Historical Records Chancellor Wei, Ambassador Talara, and there, at the head of the Craxian delegation, a figure with the same distinctive markings as Krell. "Your father," she said quietly. Krell nodded. "General Varric Krell, Chief Advocate for peaceful integration between our species." On screen, the delegates were rising for what appeared to be a formal toast when the doors burst open. A group of armed individuals stormed in, all human, wearing insignias Naya recognized with growing horror. "Phoenix Brigade," she whispered. "But they're part of the resistance." "They were a radical faction that opposed any compromise with Craxian society," Krell said, his voice tight. "They believed humanity should stand alone." The footage showed chaos erupting as shots were fired. Human delegates fell first, followed by Craxians trying to shield their allies. General Krell moved with astonishing speed, placing himself between the attackers and several human officials, taking multiple hits before collapsing. Naya watched in stunned silence as history unfolded differently than she'd been taught. The peace conference hadn't been ambushed by Craxians, it had been sabotaged by human extremists, targeting both species' peace advocates. The hardliners on both sides used this incident to justify full-scale war. Krell continued as the footage ended. The Phoenix Brigade got exactly what they wanted, an uncompromising conflict with clear battle lines. No messy peace, no integration, no cultural exchange. Just humans versus aliens. And the resistance. Naya's voice was barely audible. "Most are like you good people fighting what they believe is a just war. But your leadership," he shook his head. "Some are former Phoenix Brigade. Others are opportunists who rose to power in the chaos." The bunker shuddered as another wave of electromagnetic disturbance passed overhead. Naya didn't seem to notice, her eyes fixed on the blank screen where her certainties had just unraveled. "Why show me this?" she finally asked. "Why not just kill me when you had the chance?" Krell's silver eyes held hers. "Because ending this war requires truth, not more casualties. Because I believe there are enough people on both sides who would choose peace if given a genuine opportunity. And you think I'm one of them? I think you're someone who values truth, even when it's painful." He moved closer, sitting on a storage container opposite her. The Naya Solaris, who infiltrated 3 Craxian installations to rescue human prisoners, who diverted supply shipments to starving civilian outposts regardless of species. Your reputation precedes you, even among your enemies. Naya looked away, uncomfortable with his assessment. "You've been watching me. I make it a point to know my adversaries," he replied with the faintest smile, "especially the interesting ones." Another tremor rocked the bunker, stronger than before. A ceiling panel crashed down between them, forcing both to leap back. Water began to spray from a ruptured pipe, quickly pooling on the floor. The storm's intensifying. Krell shouted over the sudden roar of water. "We need to seal this section before the whole level floods." They worked together instinctively, Naya locating the emergency shutoff valve, while Krell braced against the weakening ceiling structure. The valve was stiff with disuse, requiring all her strength to turn. Just as the water slowed to a trickle, another violent shake sent Krell staggering as more of the ceiling gave way. Without thinking, Naya lunged forward, shoving him clear as a massive support beam crashed down. Pain exploded through her leg as the edge of the beam caught her, pinning her to the floor. The cold water continued to rise around her. "Naya." Krell was at her side instantly, assessing the damage. "Don't move. Wasn't planning on it." She gasped through clenched teeth. How bad? His expression told her enough. The beam's too heavy for me to lift alone, and it's compressing the artery. If I move it wrong? She nodded, understanding the implications. So I die here. Poetic justice, I suppose. No one is dying today. His voice was calm but resolute as he scanned the room. There's a hydraulic jack in the maintenance kit. If I can stabilize the beam first. The rising water had reached her chest as she lay pinned. Each breath was becoming more difficult, pain radiating outward from her crushed leg. Through increasingly blurred vision, she watched Krell work with methodical efficiency, bracing the collapsed ceiling section with storage containers before retrieving the equipment he needed. "Stay with me, Naya," he commanded, noting her fading consciousness. "Tell me about your home." "Before the war, coastal village," she managed, focusing on his voice as an anchor against the pain. "Northern continent. My father was a marine biologist. Mother taught literature at the university." "Sounds peaceful." Krell positioned the jack beneath the beam, beginning the delicate process of creating enough space to free her without causing further injury. It was beautiful. A sad smile touched her lips, until the day the sky turned red with orbital bombardment. Krell's hands stilled momentarily. The Northern Campaign. Early in the war, I was away at university. Came home to find nothing but ash. The water had reached her chin now. Everyone I loved, gone in an instant. That's when I joined the resistance. I led that campaign, he said quietly, continuing his work. Following orders I later discovered were based on falsified intelligence. We were told the northern coastal regions housed biological weapon facilities targeting Croxian physiology. Their eyes met in the dim light. Decades of conflict distilled into a single moment of shared understanding. No justifications. No absolution, just the terrible recognition of how thoroughly they had both been used in a war neither had created. "Almost there," Krell said as the beam began to rise millimeter by agonizing millimeter. "When I give the signal, I need you to pull yourself free. Can you do that?" Naya nodded, gathering what strength remained as the water lapped at her lips. Now. With a final surge of desperate energy, she dragged herself from beneath the beam as Krell held it aloft, collapsing onto the elevated platform that had once been a communications station. The movement sent fresh waves of agony through her shattered leg. But she was free. In one smooth motion, Krell released the jack and moved to her side, lifting her fully clear of the rising water. His hands were gentle as he assessed her injury, applying a pressure bandage from the medical kit to slow the bleeding. "It's bad," he said honestly, "but you'll keep the leg if we get you proper medical attention soon." "Why are you helping me?" Naya asked, her voice weak from pain and exhaustion. "I was sent to kill you." Krell's silver eyes held hers for a long moment. "Perhaps I'm tired of letting others determine who my enemies should be." He lifted her carefully, mindful of her injury, and carried her toward the bunker's secondary exit, maintenance shaft that would hopefully provide escape from the flooding lower level. Naya found herself holding tightly to him, her head resting against his chest where she could hear the steady rhythm of his heart. Not so different from a human's after all. "For what it's worth," she murmured as consciousness began to slip away, "I think I would have regretted killing you." The last thing she remembered was the surprising warmth of his smile and his soft reply, "Then perhaps there's hope for us yet." Naya awakened to unfamiliar sensations, a soft bed instead of a hard cot, the smell of antiseptic instead of damp concrete, and most surprisingly, the absence of pain. Her eyelids felt heavy as she forced them open, blinking against the gentle light of what appeared to be a medical facility. "Welcome back," said a voice she recognized immediately. Zoran Krell sat beside her bed, his commanding presence somewhat softened by civilian clothing instead of battle armor. 3 days' worth of stubble darkened his jaw, and faint shadows beneath his eyes suggested he hadn't slept much. "Where am I?" Naya tried to sit up, then froze as memories flooded back the collapsing bunker. Her crushed leg, Krell carrying her through rising water. "Neutral territory," he replied, gently pressing her back against the pillows. "An independent medical outpost in what used to be the demilitarized zone. Both sides respect its neutrality, mostly. Naya glanced down at her leg, surprised to find it intact beneath the thin blanket. I thought, ... Modern medicine is remarkable when properly applied. There was a hint of amusement in his voice. The doctor used a combination of human regenerative techniques and Craxian cellular stabilizers. You'll need physical therapy, but you should regain full function. She studied his face, searching for any sign of deception. Why bring me here instead of a resistance hospital? Or taking me prisoner? Because I'm making a choice, Krell said simply. The same choice I'm offering you. Before he could elaborate, the door slid open to admit a striking woman with the distinctive azure skin markings of a Craxian medical specialist. Though her features suggested mixed heritage like Krell's.
Good!
You're awake, she said, approaching the bed with a tablet in hand. I'm Dr. Tari's. How's the pain level? Manageable, Naya replied cautiously. Stubborn, isn't she? Dr. Therese directed this to Krell with a knowing smile. The nerve regenerators will cause increasing discomfort as sensation returns. Don't play hero, use the pain management system when you need it. After checking Naya's vitals and making notes, the doctor turned to leave, pausing at the door. Commander, may I remind you that you promised to rest once she regained consciousness? Noted, Dr. Krell replied, with the air of someone repeating a familiar exchange. When they were alone again, Naya fixed him with an appraising stare. You've been here the whole time. It wasn't a question, but he nodded anyway. 3 days. Why? Krell leaned forward, his silver eyes intent. Because what happens next matters. Not just for us, but for everyone caught in this war. He rose and moved to the window, drawing back the curtain to reveal a view that momentarily stole Naya's breath. The medical facility overlooked a valley where the ruins of war were being reclaimed by nature. In the distance, a mixed group of humans and Craxians worked together, rebuilding structures using a combination of technologies from both worlds. What is this place? She whispered. Harmony Point, Krell answered. One of 7 integrated settlements established in secret over the past year. People from both sides who've had enough of fighting. Enough of being pawns in a conflict engineered by extremists. Naya watched as a human child ran laughing alongside a young Craxian, both chasing what appeared to be a domesticated native creature. How is this possible? It began with individuals like Dr. Therese, people of mixed heritage, or those who formed bonds across enemy lines. Then others came, deserters, civilians caught in crossfire, scientists, builders. It turned back to Facer. A growing network of people choosing coexistence over extermination. And your role in this? I provide protection, intelligence, resources when I can. A shadow crossed his features. It's becoming more difficult as both governments grow suspicious. There have been ... incidents ... Understanding dawned on Naya. You didn't destroy it. I evacuated it, he corrected. When I discovered it was going to be sacrificed in a false flag operation to justify expanded hostilities, over 2,000 civilians relocated here and 2 other settlements. The official death toll was a fiction created by your leadership and mine H for their own purposes. Naya sank back against her pillows, overwhelmed by implications that rewrote not just history, but her entire purpose for the past 3 years. I've spent my life fighting Craxians, she said finally, believing it was the only way to honor those I lost. And I've spent mine following orders? I increasingly questioned, Krell replied, returning to sit beside her. Until I realized that serving my people might mean defying those who claim to lead them. He reached out hesitantly, his hand coming to rest beside hers on the bed, not quite touching, but close enough to bridge if she chose. I'm offering you a choice, Naya Solaris. Return to the resistance if you wish. I won't stop you. Fight on, believing what you will. His voice softened. Or stay. Help us build something neither of our worlds thought possible. Why me? She asked, genuinely puzzled. I tried to kill you. A smile touched his lips. Because even when you called me enemy, you saved my life. Because you fought for your people without becoming a monster. Because when faced with truth that challenged everything you believed, you didn't look away. His fingers moved slightly closer to hers, and perhaps because in those moments when death seemed certain, I saw something in you that mirrored what I've sought in myself, the courage to imagine a different path.
Outside.
The twin suns of their shared world began to set, casting golden light across the valley where former enemies now worked side by side. Naya thought of all she had lost, all she had fought for, and the bitter discovery that much of it had been built on lies. Then she thought of the bunker of moments of unexpected truth shared in darkness, of being carried to safety in the arms of someone she'd been taught to hate, of the strange peace she'd found even as waters rose around them. If I stay, she said carefully, I'd need to understand everything. The true history, the power structures maintaining the conflict, the evidence for what you've shown me, of course, and I'd need to find a way to reach others in the resistance, those who would listen, who might join us. Krell nodded, hope kindling in his silver eyes. It would be dangerous. I'm accustomed to danger. Naya finally closed the distance between their hands, her fingers intertwining with his human and Craxian joined. What I'm not accustomed to is hope. As darkness fell outside their window, they began to plan not for victory of one side over another, but for a future where such divisions might gradually fade into memory. It would not be easy. Entrenched powers on both sides would resist, sacrificing anything to maintain the hatreds that kept them relevant. There would be setbacks, betrayals, losses, but in that quiet room, as former enemies became tentative allies, and perhaps something more, a different kind of revolution began, one built not on destruction, but creation, not on domination, but connection. Later, as Naya drifted towards sleep, her body still healing, she felt Krell's presence beside her, solid, watchful, unexpectedly comforting. When I called you enemy, she murmured, I never imagined finding shelter in your arms. His hand gently brushed a strand of hair from her face. And when they called me Voidwalker, I never dreamed of walking toward light. Outside, the first stars appeared in the night sky above Harmony, point-distant suns around which other worlds turned. Other stories unfolded, but here on this contested planet, something rare and fragile had taken root between two people who had once sought each other's destruction. Not peace, not yet, but its possibility, dawning like a new day after the longest night.